when you consider the bias of the language model and then the bias of the audience that's built into the algorithm, and you put those two together, that has the potential to lead us to a scary place, even if it's not the intention.
Hello and welcome back to The Alchemists, a limited series podcast you'll quickly come to know as your number one love interest for State of Social 2024. My name is Andrés Lopez Varela, and you can call me ALV. Actually, an old boss of mine was incapable of pronouncing my name, so that's where it all started. He just decided I should be ALV, and that's the rest is history, as they say. Today we're recording on the traditional lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people, live at State of Social 2024. And I have to say, I've been looking forward to this chat the whole conference, because I'm a card-carrying search nerd. And I think we all need to be talking about the end of search as we know it.
Excellent.
Before we dive in, I want to remind you that the entire series of The Alchemists is now live wherever you get your podcasts, so make sure you hit subscribe to see all the eps in your feed. And with that, it's time to make the magic happen. I'm very happy to welcome two alchemists to the show today who are, I think, as nerdy as I am. Hello to Will Ball, Account Director at performance marketing agency Bonfire. How are you, Will?
Hello. Yes, I'm good.
Good to have you here.
I'm great. I'm excellent.
And Emma Hollins, the Principal Experience Designer at Synergy, WA's largest energy provider. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
So happy to have you, Alchemist. Welcome to the show. Before we get to this current generational shift in search that we're living through, I want to start by going back to 2015. That is, at least in my opinion, the last time we had a really seismic change of the search landscape, when I think that was the year Google revealed that searches on mobiles outnumbered those on desktops for the first time. And so, there have been a number of changes since search was, invented, obviously a number of iterations on the user experience as well since then. But that was the last time I think we had sort of like a reset, because up until then we were thinking about SEO, just, on-page or technical SEO, and suddenly everything was about location and context, as well as SEO, which was a pretty big deal. And it sort of saw the introduction and the importance of, more content-led stuff, right, rather than only the technical stuff. So what do you think, Will, that massive shift then kind of can teach us about how to adapt to this shift that we're living through now?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I
know. For a very long time, particularly around 2015, 16, 17, didn't you kind of feel that, you'd maybe do some research on your phone, but if you had to kind of do anything real, like buy something, you'd still have to go to the desktop and actually kind of finish the job properly.
Maybe you print something out from there as well.
Look, if you don't like change and response, you're probably kind of in the wrong industry, I think. I don't know what particularly we can kind of learn about that shift from moving to mobile, other than, hey, if you respond and you respond quickly, you can benefit from that, right? Like when Google kind of moved to more of a mobile first optimization, websites that weren't optimized well for mobile fell behind. Yeah. So I talked a little bit about it in my talk. Basically, it's an opportunity for a new incoming brand to maybe outrank some of the incumbents. So
to scoop an established brand.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd look at it as an opportunity. It's a good thing. 2015 is an opportunity for you to kind of leapfrog your competitors, and I certainly think right now.
Do you agree, Emma? Is it an opportunity or is it a bit scary?
I think, you're always going to have people who are opposed to change. I think at a point, though, you have to adapt, and it's kind of your choices if you're going to invest in it early and sort of, capitalise on that opportunity, or be dragged up the hill by everyone else. I think, tech drives a lot of that change and evolution, and then it will bring the customers with it. So as a brand, it's your choice. Do you want to adapt and meet the customers with where they're going and where they are? In 2015, when there was that emphasis on mobile first, and brands had the choice: did they want a clunky desktop website that didn't adapt to mobile, or did they want to be a really great mobile experience and cement themselves in their customers' lives? So I think it's up to the brand, really. You're in control of your own destiny. I think the smart advice would be invest now and get prepared.
Yes. It's certainly, though, I think the most interesting fact about that change, I think, is it really put the focus on the quality of the content, perhaps even outweighing the technical aspects. And that all kind of is still in the mix. We assume, we don't know what the secret sauce is necessarily, but, all the tools tell us that the technical stuff matters less and less than what it used to. The content stuff matters probably more and more. Now, when we're looking at this change, particularly when it has to do with not new players, I'll say, but people's preferences changing, and people searching in places that they didn't used to search. What do you see, Emma, as sort of the biggest driving factors in the disruption of that traditional search landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Gen Z, as we all like to call them, but, beyond Gen Z, just those who are a bit more tech savvy and sort of lean into that change as well, searching where they are. And they are, I read it online the other day, like they're asking, they're not searching. And so they are, on social media, or they're going to ChatGPT and they're in the context of their own environment looking for the answer that is relevant to them. So I think that, I think the future of search serves that well, in the sense that, and Will talked about it in his talk with the Google AI overviews, having the answer that you want served to you with a very little noise around it.
That noise is so right.
Yeah.
Like, how many times do you have such a crap experience on Google, looking for your recipes and anything, and the pop-ups and the videos, and you scroll to the bottom. And these are people that are trying to obviously game the system, kind of make money.
Yes.
They should make money. They've written a recipe, right? They're entitled to it, but it's a pretty crap experience.
Yes.
And I've been really surprised with how many people are actively. I'm self-confessed non-TikTok user. I actively chose kind of not to kind of get into it, and I've been blown away by how many people are using it and what they're using it for.
Yes.
And certainly plenty of the talks across the last sort of day and a half kind of shine such a light on that. It's if Google doesn't respond and give a better experience, it'll just become less and less relevant, right?
Absolutely.
We're seeing this kind of flight away from Google, generationally, maybe sort of literate, how tech literate you are as well, is determining that. Who are the big winners of that change then, right? Where are they fleeing to? I know that, for example, I've held an opinion for a long time that Pinterest is a search engine, not a social media network. And I think many years ago, it was said that they were number 3 search engine in the world. Who's winning now from this change? Who's picking up those kind of users, and who's serving that latent demand the best, Will?
Oh, yeah. I disagree. I don't see so much a flight away from Google. Certainly with our clients, we're not seeing declines in organic sessions to websites. Okay. We're not seeing declines in paid traffic to websites. If we look at perhaps organic is a really good baseline, right? So organic session, someone that's done a Google search and not clicked on a paid ad and come organically through the website, we're seeing really growth year on year and year. So we're not seeing this dramatic drop off. For paid search, we're seeing increased cost per click, and that's for a number of factors. And number one, Google's actually just manually putting prices up.
Yes.
More competition, more people kind of entering that space. So our clients are having to spend more to get the same
result.
So from that aspect, I'm not seeing a flight away from Google. But absolutely, we're seeing people pick up different social platforms and engaging in different ways. I would suggest that platforms like TikTok and Insta and Meta and stuff perhaps are just another touch point along that journey. Certainly right here and right now, we're still seeing people come through to a client's website to complete a purchase, form a lead or get information.
Are they still coming predominantly though through Google, or has that organic traffic, is it coming from TikTok or from Reddit when people are punching in questions into subreddits and things like that?
I'm sorry to say, because I am an advocate for more diversity and not this one huge monopoly that is just. But it's huge.
Still,
it's massive. It's the top channel. If you've got your shop in order, is absolutely normally organic. If the shop's in order. And by shop, I mean just website and having everything in place. And then paid if you're fortunate enough to have the budget and pay for the traffic. And then a very pale third and fourth will be the social channels. But I mean, maybe Emma, you could speak to it more. I mean, these platforms aren't designed for you to click off to a customer website. That's not why people are there.
No, and I think I think as well as social, I would say that ChatGPT is in the mix in terms of providing those answers to people. I think it's always so particularly with social, so contextual to the search. Like if you're searching for recipes, I think people, that's where we're searching for hacks on how to do things, like, how to format my Excel, or what's this Excel formula. Like there's a whole plethora of content on TikTok. It's wild. People go wild for Excel. But I think so in some contexts, social search is really lifting. But I think, Google still is the big,
the 800 pound.
we say for a reason, we say I'm just going to Google something when we're going to search for something.
Yeah.
And I think they will adapt. Like, I don't think they're just going to say, oh, no, technology's changing, let it run.
Yeah.
We had a good run while we were at it. But I think they will adapt and they'll get there, and they'll, pick up a lot of the learnings that the innovators have made in this space and roll it into their platform.
So I spoke with a person at the conference, and she was using ChatGPT to work out her, not citizenship, but to get permanent residency. I just thought, what a brilliant use case for ChatGPT to do that.
Yeah.
Because could you imagine Googling to try and do that? Oh. Yeah, right? Like, you're going to get a whole bunch of rubbish. You're going to get a whole bunch of lawyers and immigration people that are either paying to get to the top.
Shitty government websites too.
Shitty government websites. You're going to have no idea. They're going to show you all the different options.
Yeah.
And her experience with ChatGPT, it just tells me what to do. Do 1, do 2, do 3, do 4. I'm like...
Next step, you're a permanent resident.
Yeah.
Still, if she wants to use a lawyer, she's still going to have to kind of Google, but maybe have a better idea as to what she's looking for.
Yes, or be more prepared for that interaction at least. Yeah.
So that's a good point, because like I said, Google is adapting, and so it's going to adapt. It's very good at it, I guess. How do we think brands are adapting to this change in the behaviour and the technology? Because, I guess with maybe not the displacement of Google, but certainly with those supplementary tools. I think the example you just mentioned about, this person using ChatGPT to help them write a recipe, I guess, to, for their migration application is a good one. And, for younger audiences and those audiences that are more, tech literate that are using AI, is there a really solid playbook yet for how to make that shift, how to adapt your brand's kind of online presence, if you like, and the user experience to make sure you're not caught flat-footed?
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Like, it is really hard with the many clients that I work with. Some of which are fortunate to have a marketing team of more than one person and a coordinator. Already, it's very difficult.
Yes.
Even with an agency, just to manage paid search, organic. And maybe run, through the Meta platform 2 or 3 channels, and then to take all of that data and somewhat make sense of it. And is it actually working? Is it actually moving the needle? Are we actually getting a positive return on investment? That's really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So in terms of product shifting and changing, and TikTok, it's been on the market for ages now. There's still a lot of clients difficult to respond to that. And should we be running? And should we be paying ads? And how do we do it? And it's very difficult for brands to kind of change and adapt to what's coming. But
what do you think in terms of the way that the user experience needs to adapt? Because presumably when people come in through different front doors or side doors or whatever, you can't just serve them the same experience, right, Emma?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think something we have been hearing over this conference, which has been so good, was you've got to assess your strategy within, where the remit of your brand, and where does your brand play, and where are your customers playing, or what do they expect from you? And I think that is really, I don't think there's a playbook for how any brand tackles this, new world, but I think brands still have to look at it and figure it out. And if you, as a brand, can work out what's true to you and what's true to your customer, and then build an experience that is, true to that and, aligns with that, there are always going to be, the basic things, or I say basic, but they're so important. You're going to have to work out what your SEO looks like in this new world, and you're going to have to get all those foundational things right. But the experience that you are building for your customers in this new world, work out what they want, work out what they expect from you, and then go and build that.
Can we look to maybe, how the technology is changing for some cues, or should we be, trying to be on the front foot in order that the technology, hopefully serves us, rather than feeling like we have to be a slave to it this time?
I mean, I think no one ever has a crystal ball, and so if you're not in the tech industry,
I
know, I
left
it at home. I'll go back and get it. No, I think you want to be on the forefront of it, but you're always going to have to be responsive in some way, and things are going to change that you didn't expect. I think understanding where it's heading and getting, the advice from your agencies or your consultancies or your experts in, where do they think it's heading is always a great move. But I think at the end of the day, if you know what your customer wants and how you deliver value to them, and then can apply that as everything changes, then you're going to ensure that you're maintaining your success throughout. It's if you drop the ball and, go down the garden path with, AI, and when your customers don't expect that from you or want that from you, then, why are you doing it and why are you wasting your investment?
Yeah,
totally agree. I'd also add it doesn't have to be that competitive. It's still competitive here in Australia, don't get me wrong, but you're not going to lose out if you don't jump on that shiny new thing tomorrow because it's just been released. You can take your time. One of our other speakers was talking about that 70-30-10 sort of split for a but. I love that. Right? Spend 70% what you know is going to work, tried and tested, do something a little bit more experimental, and then spend 10% kind of maybe chasing that shiny new thing. Be genuine. Yeah.
And that's
people smell the rat.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, if you know your customer, if you know that they're not the kind of customer who's going to jump on all of this or evolve overnight, you don't ask them to, and you don't need to either. You can be more considered with it and think about how it is eventually going to apply to them when they get there.
Yeah. I guess the interesting thing with search in particular is that it is a very minimal user experience. People don't need to learn a new, quote-unquote language, if you like, to interact with that. So it's become so natural for them to search for something by typing in a word or saying, hey, Google, and then, getting it to answer and then, asking for a recipe for ravioli or whatever. Yep. That is so frictionless. And with AI, generative AI being added to that mix, it removes the friction even more. That really, at the end of the day, that this shift in search, in the search landscape now, is increasingly about removing friction, right? Yeah. And ultimately, we might think that that's a good idea, but are we commoditizing this experience? Are we setting standards that are unrealistic to meet for brands? Because we get really annoyed now when a web page takes more than 1.5 seconds to load, for example.
1.5 slow.
It used to be a miracle.
As you should.
I remember when I was
we are busy people.
I was 10 and going on the internet for the first time. The fact that it took 30 seconds to load a web page was like magic for me, right? So we want to create less friction. With this shift into this new phase, this evolution of search, is there not enough friction that we won't value this stuff properly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in experience design, we talk a lot about seamless and efficient and frictionless. And sometimes friction is actually good.
Desirable.
You don't want friction to become frustration. But friction can actually help, make sure the customer is making the right choice, as an example. So as an example, on, this isn't search, but on your Uber Eats app, you put your order in and then it gives you 5 seconds before it actually confirms the order. And that would be classed as friction because it's stopping you from doing what you want. Yes. But when you go, oh, bugger, I should have added spring rolls, you can cancel it and go in and do it. Yeah. So there are moments that friction is good. And I think within search, one of the areas that's going to be that I'm probably most interested in and how we ensure that this doesn't become the case is that reliability and credibility of information. And, it's going to be so seamless to get an answer that's tailored to you, and I can really see the role of the algorithm coming in to give you the answer that it thinks you want and reinforces your bias in the process. So I would be interested in how search engines build into their user experience some friction to, make sure that in the case where we're serving up that information that is possibly and most likely biased, where does the friction come in to alert the user and to help ensure that the user doesn't just go, oh, yep, no, cats are the devil, that's great.
That's it. Yeah.
When, they're not actually.
They're not.
They just
They're
think
great.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
See,
That's the problem with people thinking cats are the devil. It's wrong. It's wrong.
It's wrong, obviously. We know that.
Yeah. Don't get me on that high horse, right?
I wonder if Google is perhaps not so much of an echo chamber and necessarily favouring a left or a right sort of agenda like maybe your social can.
Impartial.
But maybe it is. I don't know. Depends what you're
YouTube
searching
certainly
for.
Is, right? YouTube is certainly clearly, you know.
Yeah.
It's very assertive with the way it directs content.
And the problem is AI still has biases built in, and I think that's been a big part of the conversation. And I don't preach to be an expert on that by any means, but I think when you consider the bias of the language model and then the bias of the audience that's built into the algorithm, and you put those two together, that has the potential to lead us to a scary place, even if it's not the intention.
Yeah. So I want to put the tech aside for a second, but still talk about, related to what you're talking about, Emma. It seems like one of the most important things we have to kind of keep in mind is for marketers to adapt the way they show up in these, I'm going to call them like search places, I guess, because they're not always websites. They're sometimes they're sort of hidden in layers, right? Search places based on what their customers tell them, which is what you said. So let's say rather than being rigid about where and how you appear in search, about this is how we do it, this is how we want to be, is it more important to be present across those multiple search places or environments? Is it better to have an MVP in all these different places where people are looking for stuff rather than being like, well, we're just going to be in 4 places but nail it? What do you think, Will?
It's like another great one. Like in a perfect world, you'd be like across multiple channels all the time, but it's just not. It's not feasible. It's not possible, and I don't think it's necessary to kind of string yourself out as a marketer or a marketing team or a department and do everything semi-good or dip your toe in for just a few weeks and then pull out again because you didn't get the ROI immediately. So me personally, I would much rather be in 4 channels and do it really, really well and have really
even when it comes to those search kind of places. Like, I had this conversation with a ex-colleague a short while ago about Wikipedia and about, people might go and find information about your brand and their CEO and to see if their values are aligned. Like that's a quote unquote. That's what I'm saying. It's like a search place or a search environment.
That's a good point. You should have your Wikipedia up to date.
Yeah,
right. I guess more like in terms of like a marketing strategy, right? You should have your back of house in order, correct information on your website, Wikipedias and YouTube channels, etc. But certainly as a marketing team executing a campaign, I wouldn't feel the need to be in multiple channels all the time. Like if we had a really good, clear bottom funnel strategy that is great. People are searching for XYZ product or service. We're here, we're doing it well. You don't necessarily have to spend a fortune, but do that well. Then have a really good middle funnel channel. Yeah. It's not so much whether we should be in TikTok or whether we should be on Facebook and Instagram, but have a good middle funnel channel that's giving people more information about you, your USPs, like what you're about and your product or your service, and kind of giving people that little bit of extra information that perhaps they're not going to find in the search engine, but that's kind of more your middle funnel. And then ideally move a bit further up and have some always on emotive branding.
Yeah, of course.
That sort of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think, again, like I was saying earlier, it's also going back to that brand experience and what's expected of your brand. If your brand's got no business being on TikTok and you don't have the money and the time to invest in a TikTok strategy that's going to work for you, then, don't bother being on TikTok.
So is the key really, if your audience expects you to be somewhere, even if it's maybe non-traditional search place, quote unquote, for you should be there. If they don't expect you, if they're not searching for you on Pinterest, don't be on Pinterest. But if you have some evidence that they are searching for you there, set up a shop front there.
I think you can always lead the audience there if it's somewhere that the audience would be anyway. I'm probably not going to be trying to get to my mum on Pinterest.
Sure.
But if the audience is there and there's a credible and relevant reason for your brand to play there or that they could play there, then you can always, look at that and weigh that up as part of your investment strategy.
Nice.
It doesn't have to be my audience isn't looking for my brand name right now on Pinterest or on TikTok.
Yeah.
But if there's a reason that's true to your audience and a reason that's true to your brand, then sure, if you've got the...
go ahead, knock yourself out.
Yeah, knock yourself out. If you've got the time and the money, go for it.
Yeah.
But I think if you're true to those things, then that's sort of the foundation of a good strategy.
Yeah, okay. I want to run something by you both, right? I have a theory that this shift away from the default way of searching for stuff, the change in the landscape, is a reflection or a symptom of a broader movement, broader cultural change of not trusting established authoritative sources in our society, right?
Yeah.
You can see that you know where I'm going, Emma.
Yeah.
So we see it obviously in the increasingly polarized response to traditional news outlets. Mm-hmm. We see it in the rejection of knowledge from experts and academics as sort of, people suspecting that as being malicious. Mm. The skepticism or the doubting of long proven scientific findings and mistrust of big public institutions. Has Google or traditional search become the latest victim of this change?
I don't know if they're a victim of this change, but I think this changing trust landscape is really interesting. And there's a report that's done every year it's called the Edelman Trust Barometer. And they found this year that people like me, along with scientists, were the most trusted audiences.
Yep.
But they were the clear winners, and then everything else was sort of not trusted.
Big golf.
Yeah. And so I think the people like me thing there is really interesting, because I do think we are seeing people go to social media to find answers to certain questions, because that's where their peers are, and that's where the people that look like them and talk like them and, are interested in similar things hang out. Yeah. So I think there is that shift there.
They're fortifying the echo chamber.
Yes, absolutely, which is very scary.
It is scary, yeah. So maybe it is kind of part of that same societal movement.
Yeah, and I do think that there are contexts of search that suffer as a result.
Absolutely.
But I don't think that means that Google is, dying or dead.
No, not dying, no, certainly.
I think it just means that there are other areas where people go as part of their journey and as part of their process to get that answer.
Yes.
Where they want to hear from people like them.
Something else which when I was preparing for this episode, which I thought is kind of related in a sense, is the recent antitrust ruling in the US against Google's advertising business, that it was found to actually have created a monopoly. Does that kind of, obviously that's different because that's a legal finding. How does that have the potential to change the search landscape even more from what from a marketing point of view, behind the curtain, how we're using it, how does that potentially have the impact to change the way that we might interact with this behemoth?
I think that there's probably a general feeling that nothing's going to change and it's going to be the same. And despite Google being found to have a monopoly, nothing will change. And the last time this sort of happened was at the turn of the century with the big sort of, or I was thinking more so, the big oil titans back at the turn of the century.
Yes.
But I'm glad you mentioned Microsoft because it actually was fairly recent, and it was only 1995, 99 with the release of Windows 95 that Microsoft was ruled to have a monopoly and kind of forced to unbundle its products. Yeah. And so, that really interesting case, right? Microsoft had a really big monopoly and they were bundling all of its products and squashing out competition and kind of not really giving new browsers such as Netscape kind of a chance to kind of grow.
That's a
throwback.
Yeah, but they were found having a monopoly, and then they were ordered to break up that monopoly. They were ordered to break up the monopoly, and there was a change in the White House and they never actually had to do that, but it kind of changed the culture of the business. And there's an argument that it kind of laid these foundations for Google and these other tech companies to kind of rise off the back of that. So what am I getting at is I think it would be potentially a good thing to actually break up a monopoly with a company that has just such a stranglehold on such an important market, the search market across the globe. And then that monopoly has like a flow-on effect into its other services and obviously funds what else it can do and the stranglehold that it has. So I don't know if I'm right or not. Maybe there's a general consensus it won't happen, but it could bloody happen. Like they could break up that monopoly and give search engines such as Perplexity or other channels kind of more room to grow.
Certainly could change the whole DMP landscape, that's for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Maybe better the devil you know.
I'm sure Google would say that was the case, right?
Good. Me personally, I think it would be a good thing to kind of democratise that landscape a little bit more. I can't comment on social trends and whether that'll improve echo chambers or not.
Look, we've been very measured and deliberate with our conversation so far, so I'm very excited to ask you to play fast and loose with your opinions now. Before we finish up.
Bring it on.
I have some questions that are meant to make you feel a little uneasy, but don't worry, you're alchemists, so it's like just water off a duck's back, basically. I'll ask each one of you a question or two, and then you hit me with the first thing that comes to mind. Then the other one, we can agree, disagree, we can get riled up or, whatever it might feel right, yeah?
Cool.
You're going to go first, Will?
Love it.
Okay. So as an alchemist, you rewrite the laws of the universe with your new discoveries. What is the latest thing that you've learned that you want the audience to know about too?
You can't ignore channels and changes, and I'm 100% guilty of putting TikTok in the too hard basket, and that's not acceptable. I can't do it. You can't do it. Yeah. So there's one huge takeaway. It's you can't kind of just live in your own reality and own echo chamber. You really need to consider all the opportunities.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's a good lesson. Emma, as an alchemist, you make a magical compound in your apothecary that can wipe out one of the social mediums. Just like that.
Goodness gracious.
Which one do you use it on and why?
TikTok.
TikTok.
I know. I have Gen Z at my door with pitchforks.
Yes.
I just don't think that on the whole it's the best thing for the world.
Yep, that's probably fair.
I think at the very least people would have like 2-3 hours, 4 hours a day back in their lives.
Yes.
And oh my God, what could you do with that? But I think the echo chamber, as we've been talking about, is a big problem. And I think, we are seeing a lot of negative social impacts of that echo chamber. And so I would probably say death to TikTok.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gen Z.
Good reason. High fives in the room here. Fair enough. All right, this one you're both going to answer, right? As alchemists, you understand the important relationship between humanity and the natural world, the delicate balance that exists, right? So who runs the natural world? Is it cats or dogs?
Oh, cats.
Cats?
Yeah.
You're just saying that.
No, I'm not a cat fan, but cats would run the... Oh, I mean, they're smarter than dogs.
Say that.
I think you've raised a really good point there. I think the cats... No, dogs. Dogs.
Dogs
Sorry.
are
They're just... This could be a bit more ferocious. I think they've, I think they've become too kind. I think all the dog treats. Certainly my dog.
Yes.
But I think...
Become a softie.
Yeah, I think they've become a softie. But if they had to, I think they've got it in...
They could step it up.
They could step it up.
Imagine a little cat on the back driving that dog around. I mean, it's,
Could be. I
think the dogs would overthrow eventually.
Will and Emma, this has been great. Thank you. I really appreciate you both nerding out with me this afternoon on this topic and helping explain this really important shift and what we should be keeping our eyes on. Thank you again for being part of this show and go soak up the rest of State of Social. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great.
It's been fun.
There is plenty more to wrap your ears around on The Alchemists, including heaps of in-depth chats with this year's State of Social speakers. So make sure you follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you heard, give us a 5-star review and tell a mate, or 2, or 3. Tell your mum. The Alchemists is a co-production of State of Social and Creative Fix. The show is produced by me, Andrés Lopez Varela, and Aaron Matthews from Creative Fix, with additional production support by Cal McLean. Meg Coffey is our executive producer. On behalf of all the Alchemists, I'm AOV. I'll catch you next time.